So, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join me today for our session on using Rosetta Stone at your libraries. Now, I wanted to just first take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Carmen. I'm a professional learning specialist with Rosetta Stone. I come from a language teaching background in both Spanish and ESL. You can find my contact information on the screen here. It's just carmenm@rosettastone.com. I will put that into the Zoom chat as well. So feel free to copy it from our Zoom chat if you'd like, or you can just write it down. You're welcome to reach out to me through email anytime if you have a question, might be about something that we looked at during our session together, or a new question you have about Rosetta Stone. You can reach out to me anytime through email or pass my email to anyone else at the library. Now, before I walk through our agenda, what we're going to cover and dive in, I want to first just share a little bit more general information about what exactly is Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone is a language learning program, and we aim to change lives through the power of language and literacy education. And we believe that every person can learn to speak, listen, read, and write with confidence. And we use a structured immersion approach that gets learners speaking very early and often through a variety of different activities. And so that helps language learners of all experience levels build the skills and the proficiency to use their new language with confidence. So throughout our session today, we're going to cover quite a bit of ground about Rosetta Stone and using it at the library. We're going to start out with an overview of how to get started on Rosetta Stone, signing in or creating an account. And then we're going to spend some time looking at the learner experience. So that way you'll see how Rosetta Stone works, the lessons and activities that are available to learners. And that will give you a good understanding of what patrons will experience when using Rosetta Stone, and will give you some more information to decide how to share that at your library, what you want to include, any of your own kind of tips and tricks or things that you enjoy about it. From there, we'll take a look at accessing Rosetta Stone through the mobile app, so ways that any learner can take Rosetta Stone on the go with them. It's likely how many people will be interested in accessing Rosetta Stone. And then from there, we'll talk about some best practices, and I'll share some contact information for where to get more support. When we look at best practices, we'll talk not only about some tips for using Rosetta Stone effectively, so ways to optimize your language acquisition, but also what information you might want to include on your A to Z list, or some tips for sharing Rosetta Stone at your library. Throughout our session today, please feel free to share any questions that you have. You're always welcome to come off of mute and ask a question out loud, or you can also use the chat on Zoom. Feel free to type a question in there at any time. I'll monitor that as we go. I'll pause periodically just to check if there are any questions, but really feel free to jump in at any time if you have a question about something that I'm talking about. Now, to get started, I want to dive a little bit more into something I mentioned when describing Rosetta Stone, which is structured immersion. So structured immersion is the method or approach that Rosetta Stone takes to teaching and learning language. And the structured immersion method is the most intuitive way for you to learn a new language. It's based on research on effective language learning strategies. With structured immersion, essentially, we're mirroring the way that people first acquire language as a child. So we present them with words and images, and their brains naturally make connections between them. So because you're learning through context and reasoning rather than just rote memorization, you'll build a deeper and more lasting understanding of the language. We also have you start speaking in the very first second of your first lesson, so getting comfortable with using the new language and celebrating early successes to build up your confidence. So let's dive right in and see how to get started with using Rosetta Stone from your library account. Now, I'm going to demo what this would look like from the Nevada State Library digital resources page, but for your patrons, they might be starting on your own resources page on your A to Z list. So a couple of clicks might look a little bit different. Font might be different on your page, for example. From this list, I'm just going to click right into Rosetta Stone though. And from here, we'll start out by selecting this Access Database. On your A to Z list, it might be as simple as just clicking the name Rosetta Stone, and that will take you into that sign-in process. Now, once you click on here, the first step is going to be authenticating your library card. This could look a little bit different for different libraries. I wanted to use an example of what it looks like from one particular library in Clark County, but yours might be, I think Paula was mentioning, Kathy, at your library, that it's a different code that you enter, so it might just be one number that's put in there, but something to authenticate that library card. Once you've done that authentication, it will take you onto this page to create your account or to sign into your existing account. So this is where you would put in an email address. If you're creating that account, you'll choose your own password and then select the language you'd like to learn. If you're signing into your existing account, you would just put in that same email address and password and select the same language that you're learning. I'm going to use Spanish as an example, but notice that from this drop-down menu, you can access all of the 30 language options that are available on Rosetta Stone. One point I'd like to make is that when you get to this sign-in page from your library, this would be a good point for you to once you click sign in, is what I meant to say, and you get onto this page here that's through Rosetta Stone, this is a point where I would recommend learners to bookmark the page so that they can get back to it easily. They can always access it through your A to Z list, click through like we just did together. But if they're going to be using Rosetta Stone on their own device and they want to get to the sign-in page easier, this is a good point where they could bookmark it and then come back to that same page through Rosetta Stone and sign in with their username and their password they created. Once they've done that, they're going to start out by launching Rosetta Stone Foundations. This is always how you'll get started with the actual language learning program. Now, before beginning any activities, learners will first be prompted to select their course. So here we can see a few different options appear on the screen. And while we can read a little description underneath here, I wanted to take a moment to just review, give a little bit more information about what each of these courses are. Now, the very first course that you can select is standard. So the standard curriculum is what most learners use. It provides a balance of speaking, listening, reading, and writing activities. Now, this is the most popular curriculum. It's the very first one at the top because it's what most learners use. It has a balance across all 4 of those modalities. The next curriculum option is extended. The extended curriculum, just like it sounds like, provides you with some additional learning opportunities on top of the standard curriculum. So that will increase the total amount of content that you're exposed to. So if you or another learner is someone that really wants to get as much additional practice as possible or have more activities to work through, this is a great option because it just gives you a few additional activities in the curriculum. The next option is a reading and writing focus. This is an abbreviated path through the curriculum that just focuses on reading and writing skills. So a couple instances that I might recommend this curriculum path, if anyone is a heritage speaker of a language, meaning they grew up speaking it at home, so they have quite a lot of experience listening and speaking, but maybe don't have as much experience with reading and writing and the grammar of the language, this can be a great option because they will just be focused on that reading, writing, grammar, and they won't have any listening or speaking activities. For any of those 3 curriculum options, many of them will include a reading intro, which will just add some additional activities in the first few units of the curriculum that focus on letter names and sounds and introduce reading. So this could be helpful if you're learning a language that uses non-Latin characters and you just need a little bit more support with that reading. The final option is a speaking and listening focus. This is, again, an abbreviated path through the curriculum that just focuses on skills necessary for speaking and listening with the language. So that means it is sort of the opposite of that reading and writing focus. It will only include those listening, speaking activities. There won't be reading or writing activities. So if someone is just focused on conversational language and that's where they really want to spend their time, this would be a great curriculum option. So from that page here, notice we can see all of those options and you can just check the box for whichever curriculum you'd like to use. I'm going to stick with the standard since that's the most popular selection. All right, so now once we have gotten into Rosetta Stone, we recommend that students work through all of the lessons and activities in the order that they appear on the screen. So notice that I'm landing right here on Unit 1, Lesson 1. And I can see that very first activity is that core lesson activity. Every unit in Rosetta Stone's curriculum is made up of 4 lessons. And each one of those lessons will always start with a core lesson activity. The core lesson is what introduces the key vocabulary and grammar concepts for that lesson. And then you'll see some additional focused activities. And these can include listening, speaking, pronunciation, reading, writing, grammar, vocabulary, or review skills. Now, these activities all build on one another and are scaffolded, so we recommend that learners work through the activities in the order that they appear. So starting with that core lesson and working through each focused activity, and then they'll automatically move forward to that next lesson tab. Learners do have access to the full curriculum though, so if they want to jump ahead to a further activity, they have that option. They're not locked into the curriculum path, but we recommend that they work in order since they build on one another. Now, let's start out by taking a look at this very first core lesson from lesson 1 of unit 1. So this would be a great option for anyone that is just being introduced to a language and they're just getting started with it. When you're accessing your lessons on a computer, you'll start by calibrating your microphone. And the very first time that you do this, this will also include selecting your voice type. So there'll be 3 different options here. Learners can just select the type that best matches their voice. And for any teenagers or even older children, I'd recommend using the adult options here. The child option is great for younger children. It will calibrate for like their nonlinear speaking patterns or the likelihood of a child speaking in partial words. Then from here, we'll see this microphone check. So this is to calibrate the audio input for any speaking or pronunciation activities. So from here, you can just click begin and count from 1 to 5, speaking clearly. One thing I always like to mention is that the microphone check can be done in any language. So you might have people coming to the library that are accessing Rosetta Stone to learn English. English might not be their first language. They don't need to complete this check in English. They can count from 1 to 5 in their native language, in any language. It's just to calibrate the audio input for any speaking activities. We also recommend that learners use a headset or headphones or earbuds that have a microphone attached for the best feedback for those speech recognition activities. We found a headset is the best option, but any good quality microphone will work well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hola.
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 So we can see we start with speaking activities right off the bat. Anytime you see that black box appear, that's going to be an indication that it's a speaking activity. You'll hear that little chime sound, and then you can repeat the word or phrase you heard. You might have noticed as well, since it's my first time in here, there will be some banners that appear at the top, giving a little bit more explicit instruction so learners know what to expect.
Una niña. Un niño.
Una niña.
So again, we can see those banners appear that will give us a little bit of instruction as far as what we're expected to do. That's just to introduce learners to the program. After they've answered a couple of questions, they won't see that explicit instruction appear, but they will see the same types of activities or questions repeated. So it'll become quite familiar to see that text and then select the image that matches those spoken words or the text shown. Learners can always repeat any audio prompts by clicking on the blue play buttons there.
Una niña.
Un niño.
When they answer a prompt correctly, they'll always see that green check mark. You may have to answer multiple prompts correctly in one question in order to move on to the next one. If anyone answers a question incorrectly,
un niño,
you'll see that red X and then be prompted to try again. So you'll always have multiple opportunities to learn from your mistakes and retry questions.
La niña come. La niña bebe. El niño bebe.
So we talked about how you can repeat an audio prompt with that blue play button. If I hover over the text box, you'll also notice a couple other icons appear next to that play button. In the bottom, there's a small magnifying glass. You can click on that to enlarge the text size, and you can also do that for any images that appear on the page. We also see a little symbol up at the top here. Translations are available for some lessons in the first few units. And so if I click on that little icon that appears at the top of the text box, it will flip over and it will show me that translation into English or into your interface language if it's supported. Now, one thing I always want to emphasize is that we really recommend only using the translations as a confirmation of your answer. So, in other words, try and think about the word or phrase, get an idea in mind before you click to translate it. And that gives you a chance to test yourself, start learning the word. And then you also connect that word to a concept rather than the translation. Studies have found that you remember words faster, you can recall them better when you associate them with a concept or a picture, like we see here, rather than with a translation.
El niño come.
Una niña.
Una niña.
Una niña.
Throughout the Rosetta Stone experience, learners are asked to speak aloud and work on improving that pronunciation and fluency. Our speech recognition engine will compare your words or spoken output to thousands of native speakers behind the scenes, and then uses our true accent technology to provide feedback with that circle we see. So any green circle indicates acceptable to near perfect pronunciation.
Un niño.
A boy. Un niño.
Un niño.
So notice that if that circle shows red or orange, then you'll be prompted to try again and improve that pronunciation or fluency. Also want to point out, as you're working through the activities, notice that you can track your progress with this bar across the bottom. So you can see those green check marks for when you answered a question correctly, or a red X if you answered a question wrong. On the far right, you can also hover over these three little dots and get a progress summary that shows your score and the number of correct or incorrect answers so far. If you step away from an activity, your progress will be automatically saved for when you're ready to come back to it. And you can always come back to any of those questions, even within an activity, if you'd like to repeat it again. Learners can always return to the main lesson page with their home button here.
la niña bebe,
And when I come back to my home page, notice that my progress is saved automatically in that core lesson. So I can continue it and come back to pick up where I left off. Now, let me pause here for a moment and just check if there's any questions so far about the learner experience. Perfect. Looks like we're okay for the moment. Remember, you can also type into the chat if you have a question and you'd rather type it than coming off of mute. Now, before we move on from here, I want to share one other activity type. The core lesson gives us a good idea of that experience, but I want to show an activity that you'll encounter at the end of every unit. And it's a summative activity that's called the milestone. So the milestone really takes our structured immersion approach to the next level by simulating real life conversations and relying on your active participation. So this is a speaking activity that places a learner in an interactive two-way conversation with pre-recorded native speakers. So you'll follow prompts and images to ask or answer questions based on a real-world situation. And the milestone will start building the scenario by showing some images before it begins the conversation.
Hola,
Hola.
Hola.
¿usted tiene un perro?
Yes.
Sí.
Sí. Yo
Sí,
tengo.
yo tengo un perro.
Sí, yo tengo un perro.
Pero,
¿Qué está haciendo?
¿Qué está haciendo? Estoy leyendo.
Now, I'm not going to go through the whole conversation, but we can see it gives you an opportunity to synthesize what you've learned throughout the unit and then develop confidence applying those skills into a conversation. This is also a summative activity, so we saw a pretty big jump from that very first core lesson into the milestone, because the milestone would come after you've completed all 4 of those lesson tabs we saw. So work through all of those activities within Unit 1, and it's going to pull information that you've practiced throughout those different activities. Now, when we think about the milestone, this is a really great place to see how Rosetta Stone uses that structured immersion approach. And it really builds off of each lesson and immerses you in the target language. So you start with simple terms and gradually increase complexity with more words or variations on different terms. And through the interactive activities, you'll practice speaking, reading, listening, and writing skills. Then you'll learn to use the vocabulary and scaffolded grammar concepts naturally to produce useful, everyday phrases and sentences. Now, if you have some knowledge in the language already, so maybe you've been learning Spanish, for example, we've been walking through Unit 1 and you're thinking, yeah, I'm a little bit further ahead than that, though. I do have some background in Spanish. Learners can always jump ahead to any further unit or activity in the curriculum. From this main lesson page, you can access all units in the curriculum by clicking on this little grid that says Show Menu. Here we'll see all 20 units within the curriculum and a short description of each theme. Now, if you're learning English, French, German, Italian, Mandarin, Russian, Spanish, you'll have 20 units on this page. All of the other languages we offer will include 12 units. So this page will look the same, but it will go up to unit 12 in that case. And a learner can just click into any of these higher units if they want to get started with a little bit more advanced content. All of the units build off of one another in sequential order. Excuse me. Now, on top of practicing within the lessons and activities, learners also have access to some extended learning options that are on this Explore All Content page. It's right next to the Home button. So from here, there's a lot of different resources that can help with your language learning experience. At the bottom of the page, we'll see this alphabet tool. This is a great way to work on phonological awareness or get familiar with new characters or an entirely new alphabet. You can hear the name of each letter
A, G,
and hear examples of the sound that letter makes in different words.
gusta, gente.
Right up above that, we can see this audio companion. I'll come back to this when we talk about the mobile app because the audio companion could be used on a computer, but it's definitely more suited to taking on the go with you with the app. And then for many languages, there are also phrase books, which will allow you to practice language specific or language for a specific scenario or situation. So these can be a great reinforcement of what you're learning in regular lessons and activities, or a nice targeted practice if you're preparing for a trip or some other language learning goal. So with the phrase books, you can click in to any of the topics there. And these will help you to build up your speaking and your listening confidence while you're learning some everyday phrases. Notice we'll do that same microphone check to calibrate our audio here, just like we did before the first activity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now within the phrase books, you'll see the phrase written. You can listen to it.
Gracias.
You can practice speaking it. Gracias. And then notice that you'll also have a translation option up at the top. So in the phrase books, since they're not tied into the specific curriculum and not building off one another, you always have access to a translation to see what that phrase means. So if you click on that translation button, it will show the translation into your interface language just below the word or phrase. So this can, again, be a nice way to practice some useful or specific phrases that you might need, along with building up your basic language proficiency through the lessons. Another great resource on this page are Rosetta Stone's stories. Stories cover a variety of fictional and real life topics that align to each unit. So from here, you can navigate to a particular unit with this menu across the top, or you can just scroll down through that page, and you'll see a number of different stories aligned to each unit in the curriculum. There are a lot of different text types included here, like short poems, fictional stories, descriptions of historical figures or famous places. Learning a language is a lot more than just learning the words, and the stories can be a good place to have some of that cultural learning. You can read about different people, different places, or different customs where the target language is spoken. And within each one of the stories, you have the option to listen, read, or speak any of the text, so you can interact with the content in many different ways. I love the stories. It's just a great way to interact with the language outside of your activities and curriculum and just have something fun to do that lets you learn a little bit along the way. And then up above the stories, for some languages, you'll also see an option for on-demand videos or for live lessons. These are a great place to, again, take your learning a step further and just dive a little bit deeper into the language. The on-demand videos are all very short. They're just a couple of minutes long that will cover different topics or different phrases, different themes. So it's a nice place to just dive a bit deeper into the language you're learning. The live lessons up at the top are different webinars that we offer throughout the year that, again, will cover some different topics or maybe different grammar pieces or themes. These are going to be usually 20 to 30 minutes long, and it is like a webinar format. So it's a live lesson with a live instructor. They will spend the lesson speaking in the target language and walking through some content with you. You'll join it just like a typical webinar. So your video and microphone will be turned off, but you'll have access to a chat feature. So that way you can use the chat to respond to questions from the tutor or ask questions yourself within that chat box. So again, it can be a nice way to just get a little bit more learning and take things a step further. Also want to highlight that up in the top right-hand corner, you'll notice this settings gear. This is where learners can adjust some of the settings in their course. There are two pages, course and audio. We'll land on the audio setting page, and this is where you can adjust the microphone you have selected to use, make an adjustment to your speech, your voice type that you selected earlier. And there's also a little scale down here to control the pronunciation setting. So you can use that to widen or narrow the acceptability rating for any of those speaking activities if you'd like to make an adjustment. Up at the top, if we toggle over to the course settings, here you can adjust the typing precision for any writing activities. Notice it also has the on-screen keyboard shown here. When you are participating in any writing activity, you can always use either your physical or on-screen keyboard, and the on-screen keyboard is always shown in the format of the language being learned. For Spanish, most of the keys look the same, but notice that for the on-screen keyboard, we have that ñ key here, and there's also an accent key that we can use to apply to any relevant letters. So that makes it easier when you're typing words in a writing activity to use the correct alphabet or punctuation or any of those diacritic marks. You'll also see your course selection listed on here. So if at some point you want to adjust it, maybe you're doing great with the standard, but you want more activities and want to switch it to extended, you can always change your course setting from this page. Any questions about the settings or extended learning opportunities? All right, sounds like we're okay on questions. Remember, you can use that chat as well, so don't be afraid to type one in there if you do have a question. Now, included with any license for Rosetta Stone is access to our mobile app as well. And the app is a good way to take language learning on the go and practice it anytime and anywhere. Now, you can download the app on your phone or your tablet. It's just the Rosetta Stone Learn Languages app. Note that it has this kind of orange background in the icon for the app. Now, before we walk through how to sign into the app, I want to really emphasize that before using the app, you need to create your account online on a computer. So remember, we walked through creating your account by clicking on Rosetta Stone on the A to Z list, for example, putting in your email, creating a password, and choosing your language. You'll need to go through those steps to create the account first before logging into the app. And that has to happen on the web browser of a computer. Then once you've done that, you'll be able to sign into your account on the app. I always really want to emphasize that because sometimes people are really excited about the app and they just want to get started straight away from the app, but they do need to create their account on a computer first before they sign into the app. Now, once you've done that and downloaded the app, opened it up, the first step will be to select the login option to get started. Notice that when you open the app, there's a big blue Get Started button. That button will take you through creating an account on Rosetta Stone, and that would create like a free trial account that expires after a certain number of days. Right underneath it is the link for logging into an existing account. So important to select that login option so that you're logging into the account that you already have created from your library. Once you click on login, it will ask you which type of account you have, and learners will select that work or school option. So I know it's not listed library explicitly, but it is an account that's under that same umbrella as a work or a school account since it's connected through the library as an organization. Now, once you have selected that option, it will take you to the sign-in page. Here you'll enter your username, which is your email address, the password that you created, and it will also ask you for a workspace. The workspace that I have listed here is for the Nevada State Library and Archives. It could change for your specific library's page, so it might be a slightly different number on here. One easy way to check it is when you were signing into an account and I mentioned that page that you might want to bookmark. If you look at the URL for that page, it will have S and some numbers in front of it, and that will be your namespace. So if I come back here to the sign-in page that we started on, I'll just point out what that looks like when you're signing into your account. And you'll only need to enter that namespace code one time. It will be saved for future sign-ins. So at that point, whenever they come back into their account, that namespace will be saved there. So you just enter it the first time to link it with your library's account. And let me just pull that page up real quick to show you what that URL would look like if you want to double check it in case it's different for your own library's account, since the number I put is for the State Libraries and Archive. There we go. So you'll remember that once we have clicked through from the A to Z, we'll put in our email and our password, select our language to learn, and click on sign in. And that's where we land on this page where we launched Rosetta Stone Foundations. If you look up at the top at the URL, notice that there's S and then some numbers before rosettastoneenterprise.com. That right there is the workspace. And so again, when you click onto that login from your library's A to Z list, you can just double check what that number is. That's going to be the workspace code for any patrons to access Rosetta Stone through the app. Now, coming back here, once again, the first time they sign into the app, they'll put in that workspace. It will save it for future sign-ins, so they won't have to enter it again. Before I talk about some of the features on the app, I just want to check if there's any questions about logging into it, because I know that's generally where the most questions come up from users. And so I want to make sure that everyone here understands the mobile app process and that there aren't any questions about it.
If people are having trouble, they can call the state library and ask for help or email. And then, or is there like a helpline at Rosetta Stone they can
Yep.
ask?
I will share a couple different email
again?
addresses at the end for support, one for Rosetta Stone, also for EBSCO as well. And so
Great.
those can both be great options to reach out. Any questions about the mobile app or that sign-in process? All right. It's always easy when someone else walks through it. It's like when someone comes up with a question, you're like, how did that work again? All right. So on the app, you can find many of the resources that we looked at on that Explore All Content page together. Things like the stories and the phrase books are here, as well as that audio companion that I mentioned. The audio companion is a great way to practice learning on the go when you can only focus on speaking or listening skills. So if you can't look at a screen and answer questions, it's a great way to continue learning. So it might be a nice companion for a commute while you're driving, doing chores, exercising. You want to get that language learning in, but you can't actively answer questions. With the audio companion, you will download audio tracks that align to each unit. And you'll hear a native speaker say words and phrases that you're learning, and you have the chance to repeat them if you'd like to also practice your pronunciation and solidify your vocabulary. So again, a nice way to continue practicing even if you're exercising, commuting, tidying the house, anything else that's using your hands and your eyes. And with the app, if you want to access your lessons without needing to worry about internet access, you can use the offline mode through your tablet or your mobile device. Whenever you do have Wi-Fi or data access, you can just log in and choose the lessons you want to download by clicking Use Offline. Then you'll be able to access them anywhere, anytime, even without internet access. When you are back on Wi-Fi again, we recommend that you open the Rosetta Stone app, and that will automatically sync your progress and the time that you spent on those activities. Now, let's talk a little bit about some best practices for effective language learning, as well as some best practices as far as what information to share on your library's website. I first want to start by thinking about some usage recommendations. We recommend that learners use the program for a minimum of 1 to 2 hours per week. And ideally, you would shorten those sessions into 20 to 30-minute blocks of time, about 3 to 5 times per week. And that frequency will make a really big difference to help build your memory and conversational skills. Shorter, more frequent sessions lead to better long-term retention and faster recall. So really trying to focus on using Rosetta Stone frequently throughout the week rather than just like one long hour-long session each week. I also recommend having headsets in order to have the best participation with those speech recognition activities. We've just found a headset as the best option, but any kind of earbuds or headphones with an attached microphone can also work well. Depending on the computer you use, the microphone in your computer can also work well. I have a MacBook and I found that the internal microphone works really well on my MacBook, but I have noticed that on Chromebooks, for example, it does not work very well, and it can often be a little bit frustrating because the microphone is not super great quality. So just note that with those speaking activities, the quality of the microphone you're using can have a really big impact on your experience. Now, I also want to really emphasize that language learning takes commitment. So we want to encourage either yourself or patrons of the library to use Rosetta Stone consistently and as much as they can. And there are a few different ways that you might kind of remind yourself or stay accountable for that. I often recommend scheduling language training sessions into a calendar so you can help keep track of them and stay more consistent and treat it like any other class or appointment you might have. You can also tap into other technology and resources available to you. So think about the things you enjoy, whether it's listening to music, watching movies, reading books, listening to podcasts. Download what you enjoy in the language that you're learning, and you can spend more time practicing and getting more exposure to that language. And of course, take advantage of the resources available through your library. I'm always excited to talk to libraries about this because I have to say, whenever I talk to learners, adult learners, I always give a big plug for public libraries saying, go check your public library. There's so many resources in other languages. You all probably know a lot more about it than I do, but you can always use that advanced search page and browse different movies, books, or audiobooks, music, or magazines in the language that you're learning. And so finding resources that can help with that exposure and practice. For example, I was browsing recently on a library's website some of the German resources just to see like what are some of the other languages that I might be learning. And I saw there was a movie through the library that I had seen recently at my local theater that's in German, and I loved it. It was a really great movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, they have this movie at the library. I can watch it, through my library as well and practice my German. So just remember to check all of the different resources and like platforms available to get some more content that can keep you engaged with the language. It also might mean just choosing a Netflix show that's in Spanish or in French rather than in English. And even if you have those English subtitles on, just getting that exposure and listening, you'll start recognizing more and more words as you're advancing on in your language learning journey. For more speaking practice, we suggest trying to find a friend, a colleague, someone else at the library to be your language buddy. If you are both learning the same language, you can make plans to meet up for an immersion coffee or immersion lunch where you can try and spend, that 10, 15 minutes that you're drinking a coffee together just speaking in the target language. And that way you can help each other gain more confidence and more communication practice. And that way you can immerse yourself even more, develop the confidence you need to make progress in your language learning. Then, of course, you always want to celebrate your success and your progress to stay motivated. So maybe share with your colleagues or encourage your patrons to share if you've moved up a unit or met some goals for the amount of time they spend on Rosetta Stone, just to really stay excited and motivated about the process. Now, as we're thinking about some of these best practices from the learner's perspective, some of you also might be interested in tracking usage at your library. So how many people are using Rosetta Stone and how much time they're spending on it. There are two different ways that you can do this. And one is a little bit more hands-off and automated, and another you can have a little bit more control or flexibility over. So if you wanted to keep track of usage on a monthly basis, the easiest way to do this is just request a monthly usage report from EBSCO. And our Rosetta Stone team supplies these reports to EBSCO every month. And then you can be added to the distribution of those reports or that statistical information by either calling the EBSCO support or submitting a case on their support website. If you're submitting a case, it's just that connect.ebsco.com, and you can request to be added to the distribution of monthly usage statistics for Rosetta Stone. So that's the easiest way, because then once you've requested it and you have it set up, you'll just receive that monthly usage report and then you can check the numbers. If you want more flexibility or more control of running the reports yourself, maybe you want to check more frequently than once a month, or you're very data driven, and so you want to have a little more control over those reporting features. You can also request to have your own administrator license created so that you can access Rosetta Stone's administrator tools and run the reports yourself. To have that reporting only admin license created, you can either contact Rosetta Stone's support team, which is just support@rosettastone.com. And I just realized there's a typo on my slide though, so it says Rosetta Stone. I'll put that into the chat on Zoom, and I have another slide with that support email in just a few minutes here. So support@rosettastone.com. They will help you to get your admin account created. You can also request that admin account to be created through your EBSCO rep. I believe Paula mentioned that this was Lauren, but correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, perfect. And Lauren can also request to have that admin account created for you. Again, this would be a reporting only admin license. It means you wouldn't have access to any other like administrative features with the accounts, just access to reports so you can check on usage or progress data. One really important note here, if you do want to have your own admin account, you cannot have a learner account with that same email address. So if you're using Rosetta Stone as a learner, either use a different email for your admin account, or a trick that usually works for that is if you only have one email or you want to use that same email, you can try adding +1 to your name and your email address, and that usually will log it as a different email, but any emails will go back to your same inbox. For example, my email is carmenm@rosettastone.com. I could just do carmenm +1 at rosettastone.com. Put an example of that into our chat here. And so that will log it as like a different email, but it will still go back into your own email inbox. Of course, if you have a separate email, though, I'd recommend just using 2 different emails so that you have one for your learner account and one for your admin account. Any questions about monthly or regular usage reports? All right, so then let's talk a little bit, or Paula, did you have a comment or question there?
I was going to say, do you have an example that we could see what they look like?
Are the usage reports?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pull up really quickly what it would look like if you were running your own usage report here. And that'll be similar to what you're sent from the monthly reports from EBSCO as well. Now I'm going to use a demo account because I don't have access to the library's databases because it's a little run a little bit differently than other organizations. So I'm going to just use a demo account to show you what that usage report would look like. Okay, perfect. So, and this is looking at it from the platform. So if you were getting a monthly usage report sent to you, you would probably just see the downloaded spreadsheet version of it. So in my reporting only admin tools account, I'm looking at some reports here and I'm in the usage tab. So from here, I can check on any usage or progress data. Note that I am looking at just the last month. If you're running that report yourself, you can always adjust the time frame. So I might look at all time, so we have a little bit more data to see here, for example. If I'm looking at it within the platform itself, I can check the number of active learners, and I'll be able to see some data about their usage broken down by whether they were on the mobile app or using a computer. I can view it like this as a graph, but I can also switch into a list view. And this is more similar to what you would get from that monthly usage report, where you have more detailed data broken down by each column. So here there'll be a separate row for each learner. Again, I'm in a demo account, so there are names here. For the library, it will likely either be like email addresses or a unique identifier, since patrons are just creating their account with their email address. We'll show the last activity date, the language that they're learning, the total amount of time they've spent on Rosetta Stone, and then how much time they've spent on a computer versus on the mobile app. If you're looking at this report within Rosetta Stone, you can, of course, sort by any of these column headers, just like you would if you are using a spreadsheet. And so if you have it in Excel or as a CSV doc, you can also sort any of those columns. So this would make it easy for you to check on how much people are using Rosetta Stone and how many active learners you have during that time period. Any questions about those usage reports? Perfect. All right, so let's come back to that A to Z list page. So thinking about some of the information that you might want to include to share with anyone using your library. Now, I really want to emphasize here that you can decide what you want to include here, so it could look a lot of different ways. But a few suggestions of things to consider or that I might recommend including on there are what we can see here. First and foremost, of course, a description of Rosetta Stone, and it might be something as simple as just Rosetta Stone is a language learning app that will give you access to learning 30 different languages. And if you need any help with coming up with a description, I'm also happy to share some information with Paula through email that you can put up onto your website. One of the most important things I think to include on your A to Z list is some information about the mobile app. Since so many people want to sign into Rosetta Stone on their phone or on a tablet, I think it's important to have that information explicitly shared so that they know how to do it. The most important things I would put in there are that they need to create that account on a computer first and then sign into the app. And then just some basic instructions for signing in, like entering their username, their password, and that workspace number. On some library websites, they might even include a link to download the mobile app. So you could have that link right there so that they can click on it to download Rosetta Stone's app, or just information about the name of the app, what it looks like. You might also choose to include a description of some of the resources or tools that are on Rosetta Stone. I know often people are surprised to learn about things like the stories, the audio companion, the alphabet tool. While the curriculum is pretty straightforward, you just click into an activity. Sometimes people don't know about some of the other tools or types of activities that are available on Rosetta Stone that can really help support their language learning journey. So some information about that can also be useful to share. And then you might also choose to put some of the best practices or some tips for language learning on there as well, just again to give additional information. For example, we recommend using Rosetta Stone for about 1 to 2 hours each week, broken up into 20 to 30-minute sessions. So that can be nice to share on your page so that learners know that's where they're going to start to see an impact or have some growth. If they're only using Rosetta Stone once a month, it's going to be hard for them to make meaningful progress in the language. You also might share some of those other tips that I talked about, like language learning buddies or using other resources and materials in the target language. Now, to give you an idea of just an example of what that A to Z list might look like, I pulled a picture from Las Vegas, Clark County's library page. I think they have a nice description of Rosetta Stone included here, and they also have some instructions for the mobile app. So I thought it would be just a good example to share with you. So we can see from their A to Z page, they have a description of Rosetta Stone, some information about using the mobile app and those steps, along with their workspace included and links to download Rosetta Stone through Apple or through Google Play. So again, you don't have to make yours exactly the same as this, but I always think it's helpful to see a concrete example so that you can have some ideas or some inspiration for like what that might look like on your own page. Any questions about your A to Z page or information to include? Looks like we're okay on questions. All right, well, then with that, it's about time for us to wrap up our session today. So just want to say muchas gracias, merci, dankeschön, obrigada, evharisto, shishie, grazie. Thank you for spending some of your afternoon with me to learn a little bit more about Rosetta Stone at your library. I hope that you all have very successful implementations with Rosetta Stone and that your patrons and people in the community are excited to use that as a resource for language learning. If you ever run into any problems along the way, I wanted to share a couple different support contacts with you. You can always reach us at Rosetta Stone support by phone or by email. So our phone number is up here, 800-788-0822, or our support email, just support@rosettastone.com. You can also check out our support website, support.rosettastone.com. There's a number of different guides or articles on there that can be really helpful to check if you have questions. I also wanted to include the phone number for the EBSCO support, since Rosetta Stone is offered as part of that. Could be helpful just to have that support number as well if you ever have questions or run into any issues. Now, I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes just if there's any additional questions. If you don't have any other questions, I want to thank you once again for your time and your attention today. And remember, you can reach out anytime if questions do come up. So any last questions?
Thank you. This was very informative.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathy. I'm glad to hear that.
Can you send me a copy of the slides so that I can post them on the website?
Yeah, we usually don't share our whole slide deck, but I'll share a couple of the key like information slides just as images that you can share.
Yeah, I've been doing screen grabs as we went along,
Oh,
and like the support page or the language or the tips, like what you might want to put in your description for the A to Z and the example from Clark County. And there was another one
exactly.
that you screen grabbed too. So
That's perfect.
but contact information is always good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions? Awesome. Sounds like we might be okay. All right. Well, thank you all once again. Thank you, Paula, so much for
No,
setting
thank
this up
you.
and putting it together. I'll be in touch to share a link to that recording and some of those informational slides. And if anything else comes up, please feel free to reach out.
And
Thank you
you
very
should all
much.
feel free to reach out to me in the state library as well if you've got problems or issues or questions.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a
Bye.
great
Thank
afternoon.
you.
Bye.